You're watching News 24 Live. Welcome to our Round 3 Super Rugby Prediction Show with the Sport 24 Rugby panel. Rob Harbing, Chief Writer and Editor, Garen Lamley. Gents, thanks for coming in.
How are you doing, Nick?
It's been a while. Some of us have been sidelined with man flu. Sorry about that. Guys, yeah, so this weekend, again, some tough calls to make. 2 rounds to sort of judge things by. Let's start with Rob, Friday's games. Highlanders up against the Reds first thing on Friday. Highlanders struggling with injuries, some player bans, a lot of personal stuff off the field. And of course the Reds also had a bit of controversy of their own.
Yeah, but the Reds, a little bit of a sort of a bounce back mode perhaps. I do think that they're still a pretty quality side on paper and already a tough prediction to make. I'm leaning a little bit towards the home side for this one, just figuring that a reasonably decent New Zealand side at home, probably slightly fancied, but I don't say it with any special confidence.
Okay. Garen, the Highlanders, obviously they only had the one game.
Yeah.
So sort of tough to kind of see where they're at.
Absolutely. I think last week, they had the week off in week 1, which is never ideal. Then they had the Crusaders away in week 2, which is obviously a tough ask. They went down there. They were competitive, especially in the second half, where they started pretty slowly, but they came back in the second half. It did go down. Had a few suspensions, like you say. They've lost their prop for a couple of weeks. But I think they'll be too strong for the Reds at home. The Reds were woeful in week 1, much better in week 2, but now they're having to fly to New Zealand. Never an easy task, got this Carmichael Hunt cocaine scandal hovering over their heads there. I think it'll be a good game. It's always nice to see the Australia-New Zealand matches, but I think the Highlanders will just sneak in at the end by 3 or 4 points.
Okay. Next up, the Force versus the Hurricanes. Hurricanes, Rob, great start to the season, 2 away wins. Those things are invaluable.
Absolutely. I mean, the big incentive for them is that they've got an awful lot of their travelling out of the way incredibly early. If they were to head back to New Zealand with 3 wins from 3, in other words 2 in South Africa and then nicking another one in Perth on the way home, I mean, what a glorious setup that is for them to be sort of real playoffs contenders. I still don't think that they'll be sort of top of the table type of material. I'm not sure that they've got a strong enough pack, but they do have a seriously decent backline, as we've already made note of in South Africa, unfortunately. And I actually fancy that they might just be motivated enough to sneak another little win on the road against the Force. Force, of course, in Perth, quite a tough nut to crack. They fancy themselves as having a little bit of a fortress there, but I've just got a little sneaky feeling that the Hurricanes might be up for another very tight win.
And as far as I know, the Force have never beaten the Hurricanes.
Yeah, so it's history, of course, records there to be broken, but I'm going to stick with that one.
Going to the final game on Friday, back home, the Cheetahs had an amazing start. Then of course they rested in week 2. They're up against the Blues, who have had a woeful start and historically have a terrible record on the road.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the Cheetahs, they knocked over the Sharks in week 1. Fantastic win for them. Not ideal that they had week 2 off. Then sort of lost momentum. The Blues, like you said, they went down to the Chiefs in an All New Zealand derby in week 1, then had to fly all the way to Cape Town, played for 25 minutes with 15 men, then reduced to 14. So difficult to gauge, them as a team. Obviously, they performed admirably with 14 men for 55 odd minutes of that match at Newlands. Obviously, they'll be hoping to keep all 15 men on the park in Bloemfontein. That's going to be a good game to watch, especially if the weather's good. I expect the ball to be thrown around, high-scoring game. That'll obviously favour all the New Zealand teams who like to give the ball some air. Got some dangerous runners out wide in particular. I think the Blues will be galvanised in their second match over the sort of the jet lag, having flown to South Africa. The Cheetahs might take a while to get back into rhythm. But again, I'm going to go for the home side in these sort of close matches. You tend to just opt for the home side, but the Cheetahs to win, I think, again, 3 to 5 points.
Rob, the Cheetahs, I mean, 2 seasons ago, they had a sort of phenomenal, a watershed season, making the playoffs. Last year, disappointing. I guess this year they really want to sort of keep this strong start, this momentum going. Just looking at their personnel, they got Springbok Cornel Hendricks back, and they've got a couple of their Japan players back. So Sadi's on the bench. Heinrich Brousseau is out with a concussion, but he's waiting in the wings. But then they also lose, unfortunately, Lut Diache
Yeah, tough one to call because last season when those two teams played, I did a little bit of research and I see it was 40-30 in Auckland. Of course, the Cheetahs playing away or overseas, they're a completely different kettle of fish to the team that plays in Bloemfontein. Again, I wrestled a little bit with this one. I sort of think that if a reasonably modest New Zealand team is playing a reasonably modest South African team, maybe you should still go with the reasonably modest New Zealand side on sort of current world sort of balance of power. So I'm just perhaps a little bit controversially leaning more in the direction of the Blues for this one. But it could be incredibly close and perhaps another quite high scoring affair.